Fly, you fools. Fear, players, and being a hero. In one of my previous sessions that I ran, one of the players jumped into the fray. This player likes to play calculating, well thought out, cautioned characters who generally know what they're doing and are quite competent, at least in my experience of playing with them. And so they've been playing a rogue, and normally they've played more spellcasters. And so in this last session, finally jumped into the fray. Now, the party has two other, meat shields, and they're very effective. Really, there's the Minotaur Barbarian, I think Barbarian, Minotaur Fighter. And, Pathfinder 2 Power Attack. This character is just wading through everything. It's almost... like every bad guy gets a critical hit within the first or second attack, basically, is at least how it feels. If not, the major bad guys are. So, the Minotaur is taking care of business. The thief and the cleric haven't really had to get into the fray in any solid way. They're still being effective. I don't want to say that they're not being effective, but last session was the first session where there were enough bad guys and the situation was dire enough that the cautioned character with their rogue actually got into the fray and started jabbing sharp needle points of daggers into the flesh of ghouls, which was satisfying and a lot of fun. And also, because the other characters got into the fray, the fear was heightened in the group. And it was good. It's one of those solid, all right, I'm scaring the rest of the players. I'm also scaring myself, because at one point I had two... Did I have both? At one point I had both the meat shields paralyzed. And so... It was something like 4 ghouls and 9 zombies on second level characters, Pathfinder 2nd edition. And there was a moment where I was like, oh, this could go TPK. And if I kill everyone, that's the way it's going to go. But they've been wading through everything else easily. And so things have gotten a little more challenging. We'll see how it goes. So I was afraid, the players were afraid, their characters were afraid, the ghouls started to become afraid when they got killed, and the zombies just for the until bashed in. But the fear was good, palpable even. And that was my last session. And also on the day of that session, I saw a post on social media. I don't want to, give away the username. They seemed like a very nice person, and I don't know. I haven't talked to them about this, but they asked a question saying, hey, am I really gonna like Curse of Strahd? And then they went on to detail why they didn't think they'd like Curse of Strahd. And it was very interesting because on a top level, the player, or, this person, this human being on the other end of the intertubes, was very... Horror wasn't their thing. They weren't interested in horror. And as soon as horror got too real... then it became unfun for them, if I got that right. For example, Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. It's all fun and crazy, and they said they could enjoy it until or except when they found out Freddy Krueger's origin, and so there's some level for this player, and this is just side tangent, but it's very fascinating to me. There's some level where people getting stabbed and cut up on screen doesn't bother them and is gore and goofy, I think was one of the words they used. I could be wrong on that. But then finding out why, or the origin story, which is also just as horrible, and basically you're seeing what Freddy Krueger used to do back in his origins, just in Freddy Krueger style, in the nightmare style, right? Anyways, it very much intrigued me, and they came onto a thread asking for help on whether they should play in a Curse of Strahd campaign or not, and what's the problem. And they came onto a stream, or they came onto a thread, and asked the question, is Curse of Strahd worth it? Is it going to be worthwhile for me to play in? And because I don't like this kind of horror, or I don't like these bad things. And then they said, and what I learned about Strahd is he's a terrible person and does terrible things. To paraphrase, which they were correct on. I mean, yes, the arch-villain in Curse of Strahd is a terrible person and does terrible things. And so what was interesting is in their post, it was clear that they had become focused on, and maybe even spiraling around, the hopelessness that Strahd has wrought. And what was fascinating is, because they were focused on that hopelessness that this fictional character has, this exudes, brings to the realm that Strahd lives in, that it paralyzed this player from thinking they could have fun or enjoy on the meta level, the top level, the role-playing game of trying to defeat or survive Strahd. And basically it meant that Strahd won. Like, he didn't, because the player asked questions, hey, am I going to really do this? But if they hadn't posted this question, is Curse of Strahd something I'm going to enjoy? If instead they had just talked with their friend about it, learned the little bits of details about Strahd and the overall campaign setting that they learned, and then decided, oh, there's no hope. It's terrible. It's full of despair and hopelessness, and that sounds terrible to me, and the villain is a horrible, horrible person. Strahd wins, because that means there's no heroes coming in to try to defeat Strahd. And that gets to the core of what I'm talking about, which may mean that this just ends short, because the core is, it's really important when you're playing role-playing games, especially if you're players, to recognize when you, the player, are afraid and when your character should be afraid. Because there's a lot of times when your character should be afraid, but isn't. It's a new monster they're encountering. What is this thing with tentacles and eyes? I've never seen this before. Let's see if I've heard anything about it. DM tells me no, I've never even heard of this thing before. Oh my gosh. Well, I guess I'll rush towards it and start thwacking it. Hey, all right, that's in the scheme of things that we're talking about, that's heroic. Great. Your character's a hero. But then the same kind of situation, the player knows something about the monster, and the player becomes afraid. And it's fascinating because I see more often than not players being afraid and then holding back. And that's not heroic. Now, if you're playing a cowardly or very cautious character, I'm not disparaging any play styles here or any choices, but especially for people that don't know anything about a campaign and then learn a little bit, but they're going to be a player and they're trying to avoid spoilers, so you're reading like the catchy blurb to get the DM interested. That text isn't for you. You can read it, obviously, but it's not for you. It contains spoilers, and it's stuff your character shouldn't know. And so because of that, now you've read this top-level information and learned just how horrible things are, and that's going to fill you with dread and hopelessness, which, as a player, you shouldn't feel. Your character should feel it. You shouldn't feel it. You should... Okay. You should feel it. It's important to feel it, but it's important to feel it in the moment when your character learns the information, as you, the player, also learn the information, and you realize, oh my God, we are stuck in Barovia. We can't get out of this land. How are we going to get out of this land? Well, if the initial worries overtook that player that posted that question, if those initial worries had overtaken, their character would just, I give up. The domain of dread washes over them way too quickly, and yeah, they should go be an NPC wandering through the woods, or take up at one of the local caravans, or at the one of the little villages. That's it. As a DM, that's one of the things to you're trying to walk this line, right? You want to terrorize and put fear into your players and make them urinate at the game table all over, just crying and weeping. But you want to make sure they're having fun doing that. As a little exaggerated, I'm sure you could tell. Because if you make it not fun, well, then the players start to feel actually like their characters' choices have no meaning. They're not having an effect in the game world. Their agency is taken from them, which is the worst thing you can do to a player. I mean, if you kill a player because they made choices, they'll likely be satisfied with it. They may not realize it in the moment, but yeah, it'll be far more satisfying to die because of a choice that the player made and the consequences that arose from that, rather than just some arbitrary, there's nothing they could do against it, in comes Godzilla. You don't want your players to be Bambi. If the player wants to be Bambi, great, be Bambi. There's your thumb. But yeah, you don't want your players to be Bambi. You don't want to force them into that role. But you want to scare the shit out of them just the right amount. And it can be difficult to do that. Sometimes something you had planned to be scary ends up being like, not scared. Other times it is. And then, the reverse. But this video is largely focused on players. And as a, hey, players, learn to recognize when you're scared and when your character is or should be scared in a situation, and figure out what's going on there. Because as I responded to the one person that posted whether they would enjoy Curse of Strahd, I said, look, it's full of evil. some of it little tiny evils, and some of it huge evils, and some of it by people, some of it by monsters. But there's evil of all kinds riddled throughout the lands of Barovia. I'm expanding on what I said. I was a little more succinct. But the point is when you're there, fight against it. I mean, if all you can do is just make one person's life just a little bit better in Barovia, then you've done good. And Strahd will feel that on some level and probably get angry and try to come after you. But then you fight against that and you continue to fight because that's the hero's journey. There's issues with, Joseph Campbell and the sexism, misogyny, and the, fascist leanings and whatnot. But, or fascist, just fascism. Might as well, we'll go there. But in certain cases, in certain situations, the hero's journey myth cycle wheel that Dan Harmon loves to use and stuff like that. It works. There's times when it works and it can be fun. And one of the things to consider is the call to adventure. There's something that calls the hero to cross that threshold to go into journey. They've got their normal life. Everything's regular over here. Something happens and it's like, oh, I better go deal with this because otherwise nothing will change or you die. Depends on the story, I guess. So to be a hero, you've got to answer the call in this paradigm. That's it. There's no other choice, again, in this specific paradigm. So this player didn't want to answer the call. And that they were asking, should I answer this call? And it's like, you know what? If gothic horror with really bad people in it, some of whom are vampires, is not your thing, don't play it. I mean, that's what it is. It's a gothic horror. It's based off of, second edition? Maybe first edition? I can't remember. But it's based off pretty old school style of D&D play, which means there are, at least in the older versions, there were things that could nearly kill you outright. And in the newer versions, there's stuff that'll probably kill you outright if tackled wrongly or poorly. There is no wrong. There's just, shouldn't have done that. But it doesn't matter if it was gothic horror or if it was your standard medieval fantasy type with dragons. If you, the player, can recognize, oh, I'm scared, then it's important to find out why, because confronting that fear is your own hero's journey. It's your own exploration. And again, I'm not saying you should or you have to. That's for everybody to decide on their own, whether they want to tackle different subjects and stuff through a role-playing game. I mean, some people might find that helpful, other people maybe not. And I don't think role-playing games should be substituted for any type of professional therapeutic help at all. But what I am saying is recognize when you're afraid as a player, what it is that's causing you to be fearful. And then, at least on your own personal level, engaging with that and seeing if, oh, maybe I can find fun in tackling my own fear through the game within, a safe confine of assuming friends. I wouldn't suggest in a pickup table with strangers because you never know. But if it's your friends, you can talk to your friends. Hey, I have concerns about this campaign or adventure. So, if you see me getting scared, check in with me. That'd be great. Because, I got some worries about this. That this isn't going to be fun, and that it's going to at the very least cause me some amount of anxiety, or even deep fear. So, you want your friends to have your back. And if they're friends, they will. Side note, what was very strange to me about this, the post and the question, was the player knowing that the DM was considering Curse of Strahd. Because, again, I game with my friends, and I know them pretty well. I wouldn't say I know them perfectly, because obviously I'll make mistakes, have made mistakes, will make mistakes. Gonna try to avoid all the mistakes. But I know them. They're my friends. And, I just whisked my D&D 5e campaign into Barovia. Like, whoops, going through mists, but it was night, and so it's like, what, they chose to keep going on that road in that direction. They wanted to go check that out, that took them in the direction. And when they were doing something else, they were going west, but they got news of a little something to the north, and they went north to go check it out. And that's where the mists were. So, if they had gone west, they wouldn't have gone to Barovia. I might have found other ways to get them in, but that was the way for that moment. And and they seem to be handling it all right. I know there have definitely been moments of fear, and I've definitely tried to work with, it's tough. If you're watching this and you're in that, if you're playing in that game, there's a lot of things that could probably kill you outright, no matter what level you're at. There's things that will be tough, whatever level you're at. And, and then there's stuff that are doable. And, so it's one of those things where I don't want to do spoilers for anybody that's played it. So they have had moments of, oh, hey, we can affect change in this world. Our actions can lead to things that appear good, hopefully are good. Might not be good. Maybe you've all done terrible things. Anyway. So that's it. Players, notice your fear. Know when your characters should be afraid. Play your characters being afraid however you want. A little bit of realism goes a long way. So, oh, that's scary. My character shakingly draws his sword and takes a step forward to swing. That's great. Your character's a hero and living in a world where these things do exist. So, perfect. And then for yourself, check your fear. Notice it. Are you having fun with that fear, or is it just making the game a nightmare for you to play in? Because if that's the case, then, change things up, figure out why you're being afraid, and see if there's anything just on your end that you can adjust to help, take that pressure off. Because fear it's a pressure, it's a build. It starts with a concern, builds into an anxiety, and then becomes that weighted pressure. Just, what's going to happen? I think it's all bad that's going to happen, and here it comes. And then, it's a game. So, you shouldn't go full. It's not good. I'm not saying you shouldn't, because if you are, then you are. And, I'm not saying don't have your own feelings. I'm saying that shouldn't be the case for the role-playing game that you want to have fun in. It should take you into your emotions at a pleasant level. And if you're someone who doesn't have emotions, then it might be unpleasant to have any emotions. Well, that was a fun ramble. Like and subscribe if you enjoy this kind of content. If you don't, then, urinate on my YouTube channel. And have a wonderful February. And Black History Month. And Valentine's Day. And President's Day. Yes, and President's Day. That's coming up. And happy Aquarius Pisces month. All right, ramble over. Stop this.